Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's International Safety Awards webinar. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes to allow for all the participants to join, and we should start at about 11:02. Thank you. Hello again, everybody. I think we should probably get started because we've got quite a jam-packed agenda for today's webinar. My name is Ruth Mullen, and I am the Head of Membership Awards and Events at the British Safety Council. And today I'm joined with Neil Stone, who is our International Safety Awards Chief Adjudicator, and David Parr, who is our Policy and Technical Advisor for the British Safety Council, and also the Independent Adjudicator for the International Safety Awards Scheme. My colleague Angel Labra is also here from the membership team, and she's part of the presentation team today. So our webinar will be split into six sections today. To start, Angel will be providing an overview of how to access the awards platform. So Angel will be displaying a video which will demonstrate a step-by-step guide of how to log on, assign licenses to colleagues, edit and submit your International Safety Awards applications. Following this, Dave Parr will go through the marking criteria for the scheme. Neil Stone will be leading a discussion on the common errors and pitfalls of previous applicants, and will also provide top tips on how to avoid these and produce an excellent high-quality submission. Following this, Dave Parr and Neil Stone will be presenting the ISA 2022 question themes, and at the very end there will be time for questions and answers. So please feel free to type your questions into the questions bar on your screen throughout the webinar, and we will pick these up in the final Q&A section at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Angel. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. Hi, everybody. My name is Angel, and today I'll be showing you the step-by-step process of how to access your application. So first and foremost, once you have purchased your application, you will receive an email to notify you that we have granted you the license. So the email will kind of look a bit like this, which will say the purchase and how many licenses you purchased and how many we've granted. Just a quick note, we will only grant the license to you once we receive the full payment of your purchase. Once you receive this, what you will need to do is log into the website, our British Safety Council website, log in using your credentials. So, once you're in, you'll see a little man tab right at the top of the right corner of your page, and click, and it will be the purchase and subscriptions. Once you're in, if you scroll down to the page, you'll see the Learning Zone Access. So if you click this, it will send you to the next portal where you can see the Learning Zone Access portal. Sorry. Some of you might be familiar with this as we use this as our part of our e-learning portal. We've actually moved from open water to our own portal this year for the International Safety Awards application. So once you're in, you can see the summary in here. You can see blue tabs in here that you can click through. So one tab, for example, the courses licenses. You can see in here how many licenses that you have purchased. and how many you need to remaining left to allocate. So in order for you to access your application, you'll need to enroll the user who will be completing the application. So if this is yourself, what you just need to do is go to dashboards, scroll down to right at the page here, find your name. I know there's quite a lot of courses as displayed in here, but find the name, your name, and find the license that you'd like to allocate. So if you click here, so here, Angel Labra International Safety Awards, click the blue small box in here, scroll down, and you see enroll selected. If you just select that, and it will just prompt you to the next page to kind of confirm if you're happy to basically enroll yourself into the license. So just click yes in this. And what will happen is, in order for you to access your application, all you need to do is click My Learning. And you'll see here that you've successfully allocated yourself onto the course, as you will see the launch button. However, if someone else is completing the application, you'll need to create a user for them. So in order for you to do this, you need to click Users, add a single user, and you just have to fill out the mandatory fields here. So I'm just going to use Ruth's name. I hope you don't mind, Ruth, here. And then Ruth's email address. Make sure that you will click the send welcome email. So once you prompt this and save the changes, Ruth will receive an email which will look, she will receive an email which will look kind of like this, which is her own login details. Okay, once you create a user for Ruth, what you need to do for the user, what you need to do is go to dashboard again as before, find the user's name, that's what we did earlier. For example, BSc Angel Labra, and allocate as normal. That's what we did. And enroll, row selected, and then click yes. And what will happen is Ruth will just, the user will just have to log in using the login details, and they can access the, they can launch the course as normal. However, if you have purchased multiple licenses, so for example, Ruth has purchased 5 licenses, and she's completing this all herself. What you need to do is, again, create a user, but this time you need to create a user per application. So I'll give you an example now. So I'll put application 1, or you can even import your site name in here. And we'll use Ruth's email address again, for example. But this time, as you can see, if I press save now, it will say already existed. That's absolutely fine. The way that you can override this is you have to change, capitalize a character of your email address. So I'll give you an example now. So in here, send welcome email, application 1, save changes. Second. Right, and you do the same thing, add user, application 2, Ruth Mullen, and change a character, and so on. And what will happen is each application will have their own login details, just like this. So you can log in and out and switch into the application that you need to apply to complete. And we also have a button here that says reports, where you can see all the login details that have been sent to the user or for the application. So for example, in here, this is the one that we created just now. So what you need to do, if you need to complete that application, what you need to do is you just need to log in Apologies. Log out of this. And then this is when you complete your application. Oh, sorry, I've not. Apologies for that. Apologies for this. Technical issues. Yeah, so what you need to do once you created the application, a user for each application, you need to again enroll those users and find, for example, application 1. Here, application 1, click here and click enroll here, as what we did earlier. And what happened is that when you're trying to complete this application, you just need to log into the using the username and password that's been provided. So once you enrolled and allocated all the license, you can then just launch your application as so. If you click here, and you'll see where the page where you're actually going to complete your awards application here. You'll be greeted as with a welcome page, and you have a few buttons in here that you can click through. So for example, supporting materials, this is where you can see a marking scheme that we're going to be discussing later anyway. Last year's chief adjudicators, you can view that in here as well. We've also got the for adjudication processes. So in here, you can see all the key dates, important dates and deadlines that's for the International Safety Awards. Lastly, we also have a button for the additional awards. So you can actually have a look at the auto entry awards and free to enter awards that you can enter here. And for you to apply, so for you to start your application, you need to click your application. Click through application form. So this is also, you can upload your evidence in here, but you can also, I'll show you later on how can, because you can see at the bottom of the questions anyway. But to start off, you click application form. So bear with me for a second. I think what happened was that as I've already completed this, apologies for this, let me just log in to another. Try and log in using this.
So Angel, I'm just a bit conscious of time here because you know, Neil and David have quite a bit to get through today. So I think the main things are really logging into the application, assigning the licenses, and then also, you know, how to kind of navigate once you're in the application. And I think, you know, are you comfortable that you've covered most of those areas?
Yeah. So the last bit is actually just showing you how to complete the application. So once you've actually completed with the application, I'll show you. I won't go through all the questions as Neil and Dave will talk through that later on. Once you finish your application, here's the questions in here. You just finish attempt and then submit all applications here. Submit all and finish application. You will receive an email to confirm that you have submitted your application. I just want you to be aware that once when your application has been is being adjudicated, you will receive an automated email to kind of let you know that it's being reviewed. Please know that there's no actions from your side, and all results will be sent to you in on the 10th of March, which is in here. The results were emailed to applicants. But yeah, that's all really from our side. Lastly, if you've still not purchased your application, you can, for UK and international clients, we have, you can purchase this online through our website, or any other queries, you can also email me at awards@britsafe.org. For our clients in India, it's quite a different process with purchasing. You can contact our support contact line here, and also the email. You can also email customer services India using this email below here. Lastly, as well, we also, just to remind you that these are our key dates and deadlines for International Safety Awards. Yeah, so this is the key date. So yeah, that's it for me really. And I'll hand you over now to Dave, who will talk to you about the marking scheme of the awards. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Angel. Yeah, so my name's Dave Bart, as Ruth introduced earlier. I'm an independent adjudicator on the award schemes for British Safety Council. Just to explain a wee bit about that role, basically its main function is, it's my fault actually, so I set the questions, finalise the question set for the application for the award schemes each year, and support Neil, who's the chief adjudicator, and I'm sure Neil will outline his role shortly, and also to provide support to a panel of adjudicators. So this year we are anticipating up to 10 adjudicators who are all health and safety, very experienced health and safety professionals from various sectors, and Neil and I ensure that the process of adjudication, that's marking all of the applications, is standardised as far as is reasonably practicable, and we sample and provide quality assurance, so you can be sure that your application is being reviewed by, as I say, an experienced health and safety professional person. In terms of the scoring criteria then, and how the adjudication takes place, you'll be aware that there are 12 questions in the application, in the award scheme, 10 of which are scored, and 2 of which, that's questions 1 and 2, although they're unscored, and I'm sure Neil will emphasise this point shortly, are very, very important, because they set the scene and the context of your organisation for the adjudicator who's going to go through your application. So my first top tip, if you like, would be, don't disregard questions 1 and 2, and I don't mean disregard. What I mean is, don't sort of think that, well, these are not getting marked. It's just a question of of putting some information down. They're very, very important, because, as I say, the adjudicator who's going to decide whether you've achieved this award or not, and to what level, is not going to meet you or the organisation. So he or she needs as much information as possible in this question 1 and question 2. So we then have 10 remaining questions that are marked, with a maximum of 5 marks for each question available. So obviously the maximum marks for the written part of the application is up to 50. Each question must not exceed 750 words, I think it is this year, Ruth. I think that's right, isn't it? Per question. And again, and I'm sure Neil will encourage this as well, whilst we don't sort of advocate writing for writing's sake, it's quality rather than quantity. However, you do need to take the opportunity to use as much as those 750 words per question as possible, again, just to demonstrate to the adjudicator not only your understanding of the question, but also your site, your organisation methodology, if you like, of how you implemented what the question is looking for. And we'll come to the question shortly. So the pass threshold itself is determined by Neil, myself, and ultimately the Executive Board of British Safety Council, who act on the recommendations from Neil and myself in terms of the pass mark. Generally, it's been around, to be perfectly honest, it's been around the 30 mark for a pass in previous years. But there are two other grades available. So there is a merit grade and there's a distinction grade. So again, it would be unfair at this point to say that 50 marks will gain a distinction, because although that has been the past market for a distinction in the past, it may be slightly different this year. So as I say, the threshold is determined by Neil, myself and the executive board. As well as the written questions, there's also several questions, 5 of them in fact, that give you the opportunity to submit supportive evidence. Now, each one of these 5 questions for the supportive evidence is worth 1 additional mark. Now, you don't have to take this opportunity to add supported or upload supportive evidence, but quite frankly, why wouldn't you? You know, and it can be the difference between a pass and a fail, or a pass and a merit, or a merit and a distinction. If there's 5 additional marks there available, I would encourage you, and I'm sure Neil will say the same, to take the opportunity to add evidence where appropriate. So let's look at that supportive evidence a little bit closer. It might seem as though this is an obvious thing to say, but the evidence that you upload, the supportive evidence, must be related to your answer to the question. And I know that sounds very quite obvious, but and again, Neil, I'll pick this up, stealing your thunder, Neil, but you'd be surprised how many supportive evidence does not actually relate to the question, and that isn't going to get you the mark quite clearly. Now, it can be any kind of evidence that you think is appropriate. So, for example, if you are writing about a risk assessment process, it would seem logical to me to upload a risk assessment example. If you're writing about a training course or material that you've put together, then surely an example of that would be entirely relevant and will gain you an extra mark. As you'll see in the application and the eligibility criteria, the supportive evidence must be in English or have been translated by yourselves, you know, the relevant parts. If it's a big document, if it's a video, if it's a photograph, you need to highlight to the adjudicator where you want them to look. So, for example, if you upload a photograph of an inspection of a construction site taking place, you need to write on that photograph what is happening. Don't assume that it's self-evident. Just put some annotated notes, some written notes on the photograph to say, you know, site inspection, blah, 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 just so that the adjudicator can clearly see what the evidence is meant to indicate. If it's a big document, such as, I don't know, a health and safety manual, let's say, then just say, refer to section 6 or whatever it may be. Don't expect the adjudicator to go and find the relevant parts. Point them in the right direction. You know, they have a lot of papers to mark, a lot of applications. We want you to succeed, so give yourself every chance. Give yourself every chance and point the adjudicator to the right part of the evidence. Again, just to stress, this is optional. You don't have to upload additional evidence, but there are 5 extra marks there if you do. We also recognise the organisations or the sites accreditation. So if you've got accreditation certification to ISO 45001, or you've recently taken within the last year undertaken the British Safety Council 5-star audit, we recognise, as you can see there, 2 extra marks for the ISO and 2 extra marks for a 4-star outcome, or 3 extra marks if you've managed to achieve a 5-star result from your British Safety Council audit. So if you have got those, again, upload them, and it's another possible there, another up to 5 marks, isn't it? So these are the additional parts of the the scoring criteria. Can you just flick on, Angel? Okay, so just coming to the actual marking, how the adjudicators mark it, and these are all on your application form. So, you know, it clearly states how they're going to mark it. So to get a top mark, a 5 marks, we're looking for a comprehensive explanation or description, depending on what the command word is in the question. And what I mean by that is that there is a slight difference. So an explanation, for example, would require, we would be looking for a wider, more detailed response, if you like. So why you're doing this particular example, or, you know, why the risk assessment, using that again as the example process, is needed, who's involved, how you did it, what the effect of it was. So a really detailed explanation. If it's a description, it's a little bit more sort of wider, if you like, a more well, descriptive response about the process. So make sure that you, to get the 5 marks or even the 4 marks, that you do use that word allocation. Can't stress this enough, and Neil will do exactly the same. We're looking for a range of examples from the site in question, the applicant site, to illustrate your answer. So don't focus on particular one example, for example, because as you can see there, that's going to perhaps take some marks off you. So at least 2 to 3 examples. Don't need a massive amounts of detail there, but we do need a range of examples in the answer. And as you can see, weak explanation, no examples is going to cause you to lose a considerable amount of marks per question. So again, just to emphasize the point, and Neil will do exactly the same, I'm pretty sure that we are looking for site-based examples. So although you may be writing about a corporate process, a group or an organizational procedure, we need to have, that is fine, but we need to see within the answer an example from the site. Okay, so I can't stress that enough. As I keep saying, the adjudicators are looking for you to help you to succeed with this. We want to recognize your achievements in health, safety and well-being, and the questions are set around those 3 areas, and they're not looking to penalize you, but by the same token, the award has to be worthwhile. It has to be something to be to mark as an achievement. So take care when you're writing these responses. Make sure you refer to the question set clearly and carefully, and follow the sorts of pointers for each question that's there. So I think Neil's going to take a look now at some examples of where people lost marks last year and where to focus on. Neil?
Yeah, okay. Right, can I just go back? First of all, good morning, welcome. 156 of you on this webinar. I just hope that you go away from this hour actually getting a great deal of value out of it in terms of helping you to complete your application form. As Dave said, the most important thing for all of us, Angel, Ruth, Dave and myself and the adjudicators and the organisation, is we want organisations to be successful and to get an award. So we're not sitting here thinking of ways of marking you down. We want to give you the support that you need in terms of producing good quality information that get good marks. So supportive evidence, I cover the things that I'm not going to sort of replicate what Dave has said, and some of this is self-evident, but let's just go through it. So, supportive evidence unrelated to specific question, not in the English text. Well, Dave's covered that. Is the second bullet point, examples. A number of poor applications last year, or not poor applications, but applications that didn't attract high scores, only included one example. So, for example, where you're talking about top level leadership involvement in ensuring that health and safety is well managed within your organization. Some organizations, for example, just quoted one example of a top level management holding a meeting once a year to discuss health and safety performance. Well, that is just one example. You need to bring your application to life. What the adjudicators need to understand is they need to understand how your organization breathes, you know, what's important and how it actually really works in practice. You know, this is not theoretical. The fourth bullet point, use of theoretical response. We saw that a few times last year, for example, talking about change management, where there have been changes within the organization where applicants had had sort of lifted something theoretical and dropped it into their answer. What we want to know, for example, when it comes to a question like management of change, is what changes have taken place. Is it changes in ownership of the organization, which have actually had an impact on what your organization is doing, what is producing, what is providing? Are there changes in processes? Are there changes in personnel? And talk about how that's been managed, who's been involved in that process of change, how risks have been assessed in light of the changes that have taken place, and how you've managed it, and what the impact of those changes have been, and what you have done. So, you know, think expansively. Never lose sight of what have you done, how have you done it, and why have you done it, and what impact you have had in terms of across the piece. Dave has stressed the importance of the additional marks. The additional marks, you might say, well, there's not many marks involved. There's only 5, and the additional marks, if you've been, you know, certified, those marks can make the difference between a pass and a merit and a distinction. So don't sort of say, well, they're not important, because they are. And they're easy marks to pick up if you think about it. Avoid duplication. We want, as Dave said, site-specific examples. Yes, your organization might be submitting 15 applications. You might have common management systems. You might have common senior management, but do think about the specific site and the specific risks, because every site will be different. You might be producing the same goods or services. You might be producing you might be providing the same services. However, because of the people involved in that organization, there might be peculiarities relevant to that site, which do mean that you need to think specifically about your organization, your site. Use the word allocation. You're not going to get marked down if you provide a really excellent answer and you've only used 500 words but not 750. But do use the word allocation, because it helps you provide the examples that we're looking for. Remember, we're not looking for one example of how you've actually carried out that specific task. We're looking for a number of examples to bring the application to life and to add colour. Okay. One of the weaknesses last year in some applications were that they literally just provided a couple of sentences. So, for example, let's have a think of an example, emergency arrangements. They might have sort of said, yes, we have emergency arrangements in place at this specific site. These are the people involved, naming the people and their job titles, but doing nothing more in terms of what the hierarchy was and how it worked. So remember, brief responses are bound to result in low marks, either no marks or 1 mark, and in some cases 2 marks. So, you know, use the examples and think about providing the examples that really do justice to how you're managing risks within your organization. Ensure submissions cover the effectiveness of examples used within the response. Yeah, so it's just not providing the examples, but it's using these examples to paint a picture. Okay, and failure to fully understand the main theme and components of a question. This is one of the important things. This is not, I say it's not an exam, but it is an exam in a way. But it is very, very particular to the site for which you're submitting the application. You know, don't look at this simply in terms of, right, okay, I've answered the question, that's done, let's send it off to Ruth and Angel. Think about taking the time that you need to put yourself and your organization in the best possible position to get a really good score and to get that distinction. Because a distinction, is hard. It's not difficult to earn, but you have to go a long way to get that. But if you look back last year, 16% of applicants got distinctions. So it's very, very possible to achieve if you put the time and the effort into your application. Now, I appreciate that you and your colleagues are incredibly busy people dealing with health and safety at a time of great stress across the globe in terms of the pandemic, but do take time to check your application, reread it and reread it, and get colleagues that you work with who know their stuff when it comes to managing health and safety risks to be a peer reviewer. Encourage them to look at the questions, think very deeply about the answers that you've drafted responses on, and get them to share the benefit of their knowledge to ensure that you're in the best position to get full marks. I will go back once again to what Dave said. Question 1 and 2 are so important. Although there's no marks, these are the things that actually help the adjudicator to understand what you're doing at that specific site, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, who works there, and the tensions and the stresses and strains that the organization faces in terms of doing what it does. Now, they might be in relation to physical, physical tensions, physical risks. It could be that you've had a change of ownership, for example, which has actually affected the management structure, the way that the organization runs, which is important. So set the context, get the context right. Because when I was doing my judging last time, I often, when I was looking at an answer to a question, I'd often go back to questions 1 and 2 and your answers to see what you'd said there. So, don't assume that the adjudicators know everything about your organization. The adjudicators are looking at your organization with a fresh pair of eyes. Don't assume that they have absolute knowledge of how you operate. They're bright people, they're clever people, they're absolutely committed people. They want you to succeed. Help the judges understand what you're doing within your organization, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, to what effect, and bring it to life by providing really strong examples. I'm sorry if I'm shouting at you a little bit. My voice is a bit croaky. I'm not going to bore you with this, but I've got COVID at the moment, as have many people across the globe, and it's a real pain in the bum. However, thank you for joining us this morning, and I hope you're finding this process helpful, and we've still got quite a bit to cover, so I'll end there.
Thank you, Neil. It's Dave again. Just to pick up on before we quickly look at the question set again. I know I'm repeating what Neil's just said, but I do stress honestly, question 1 and 2 is very important. Although not marked, it does really help the adjudicators, and get them on side, and let's get you this award. So let's have a look at this year's question set then, or the themes around them. You'll appreciate that obviously we're not going to take you through every question and how to answer it, and this is what you need to put in, otherwise there's no point, is there? So let's take a look at this. As you can see, excuse me, those are the themes around the 12 questions this year for this year's award. Again, excuse me, emphasizing question 1 is the organization background, and question 2 is around the significant operational hazard. So we're looking for examples, or at least one example here, from a health hazard, a safety hazard, and a well-being issue, shall we say, or hazard. So we're looking for at least one of each in those areas. Question 3, Neil, then sort of links back to question 2, and asks you to explain how the control measures you've implemented for one, and again highlighting just one of the hazards from question 2.
Can I just take Dave?
Go on.
If you remember last year, one of the weaknesses of some applicants was that they repeated the 3 hazards from question 2 and detailed them all. So you do make sure that you only pick one of the 3. It obviously makes sense to pick the one of the 3 that you can best explain in terms of how you controlled that particular hazard, but don't cover all 3 again, because you've got 750 words, and if you do that, you won't do justice to your organization and how you've actually put those control measures in place. Sorry, Dave.
No, it's fine. That's absolutely spot on, because I think I'm right in saying, Neil, that the adjudicator will, if you put more than one, if you write about more than one of those hazards in question 2, if you write about more than one in question 3, the adjudicator will only look at the first one that you've written about. They won't take into account the others. So it's a really good point, and I'm glad you picked it up, Neil. So let's pick up one of the hazards that you've identified, or risks or issues, in question 2, and let's write about them in question 3. Now, the key word here in question 3 for me as an adjudicator, because I, like Neil, with another hat on apart from independent adjudicator, I'm actually marking some of these as well, some of these applications. The key for me that differentiates a good answer from a really good answer, if you like, is an almost start to finish description or explanation. So in this particular question, I would be looking for, so how effective was all of it? Yes, you've told me about the hazard, you've told me what you've done, what the control measures are. How effective was it? And how did you monitor that effectiveness? That to me would be a complete answer. Illustrate it with a couple of examples from the site, and that's perfect. That's going to get you 4 or 5 marks. And for me, as I say, the key word there is effectiveness. So, you know, we can all identify what controls we need for a particular hazard, but how effective has the implementation of that control been? So, you know, get that in there, put that in, tell us how effective it was, or not, as the case may be, you know, and what did you do about it if it wasn't? How did you adjust it? So, you know, a good, really solid answer would include, for me, that explanation of the effectiveness. I don't, Neil, I don't intend to go, we don't intend to go through all of these bit by bit. However, let's pick a couple of pertinent ones as examples. So question 5 is very, very current. It's obviously specifically related to around the management of COVID-19 within the workplace, and in particular, how you've consulted with and communicated to staff within the workplace regarding your control measures specific to managing the risk from COVID-19. So everybody, I would imagine, without exception, has had to introduce to you know, various degrees, new arrangements, new ways of working, different ways of working, and having to adapt to the risk presented by the transmission of COVID-19. So how did you do this? How did you consult with people, and how did you communicate these new arrangements? I think, and go on, Neil, go on. Yeah,
this is one of those questions where, you know, you get a very low score if you say something as simple as, we have complied with the government guidelines and regulations regarding COVID, and that goes for applications from across the globe. If you say we comply and we've assured ourselves that we're complying, that's not going to get you any marks, or very few marks, or just 1 mark. You know, the best applications will actually demonstrate what they've done to ensure that their workplaces are safe, and that they've, as Dave said, communicated with the workforce and assured the workforce that they put the necessary measures in place to ensure that that is a safe and healthy workplace at a time of a pandemic. And what we saw from applicants last time, both UK and across the Middle East and from South Asia and across the globe, what we saw was that the good organisations said, we don't want to shut down and stop the operation. We want to carry on operating. It's important for the organisation for a whole number of reasons, you know, that we carry on operating. What do we need to do in a very short space of time to put the necessary controls in place to ensure that we can bring our workforce back and they will be healthy and safe. And not only do we know that they're healthy and safe, but they know that they're going to be healthy and safe. So this is one of those questions, going back to what Dave said earlier, where you give a number of examples of what you've done to ensure that COVID has been effectively controlled, and you've involved your workforce in ensuring that those controls are effective.
Yeah, and just to stress this, I think this is a great opportunity for you to showcase what you've done. Might be the wrong word, but I've in sort of other roles that I've taken up this year, I've done an awful lot of work on COVID-19 management within very, very wide-ranging sectors and workplaces, both from an audit point of view, seeing if they meet current guidelines and things like that. And there's some fantastic stuff gone on out there. Organisations have actually somewhat perversely taken this as an opportunity to improve and make more efficient their working processes. And you know, there's some brilliant examples that I've come across. So take the opportunity, and this is also a question that you can provide supportive evidence for. This it attracts an additional mark, so you can pick up 6 marks for this question. And to me, I think that, you know, that there should be a lot of applicants who are getting top marks for this. So that's question 5. Question 6 is focusing around senior management leadership, and Neil has already used that as an example, so we won't go into that. The only thing I would say about that is make sure you define what who senior management is or are within your organisation. Now that might seem you know, a fairly crass thing to say, but it's not, because different organisations have different structures. So, you know, a senior management team, for example, may not be the most highest level, if you like, of management within the company. So make sure that you define in your answer who those senior management people are. And I don't mean, you know, by name, I'm talking about by role. Maybe number 7's worth mentioning: emergency arrangements for people with or persons with specific requirements. Again, you know, we're talking about personal evacuation plans here, but we're looking at how you consulted with the individuals, how effective the processes are. How do you know they're going to be effective? Hopefully you'll never have to use them, you know, because it's an emergency event that's taken place if you do. But how do you monitor and how do you ensure that these are going to be effective if and it's going to be suitable for that individual? So explain that to, you know, within that answer. Number 8, perhaps, Neil, is worth mentioning: a staff wellbeing, and again linked to COVID somewhat.
I think what we saw, you know, very, very strong applicants who got distinctions answered this question very, very effectively. I think some organisations got confused, and, you know, well-being, although in some ways it's been around as an issue for a long time, it is difficult. It's not tangible. You can't always see it. I always sort of quote my time when I was in the health and safety executive that inspectors can go into a workplace and see a process or a piece of machinery and identify whether or not it's working effectively and safely. But when we're talking about, you know, people's health and well-being in relation to mental health, it's far more difficult, both for a regulator and for, you know, for management to see. So It could be initiatives that you put in place. It might be partly in response to the pandemic. What are you doing to ensure, staff are in healthy situations? It may be particular initiatives that you put in place to encourage, staff to be healthier, both in terms of how they carry out their work, but also healthier in terms of how they live their lives. So think expansively. Think in terms of, it's not necessarily just because you bought a well-being package from some provider, but it could be simple things that you've done to ensure that staff who are encountering issues such as stress, for example, both at work or at home, how you actually deal with that as an organization. This is difficult stuff. Let's not kid ourselves that well-being is easy and you can buy a package off a shelf and everything's all right. It takes a lot of time and effort, but think very, very widely about what you're doing in terms of trying to ensure that your staff are healthy. It might be through the provision of, assistance with diet, with exercise, with health checks. Think expansively about the examples that you've got in your organization that you think are important as an organization to help those individual members of staff do a good job and lead a good life. Think expansively. That's my advice.
Again, to take up Neil's point, I think this is a really good opportunity, this question, for you to present some unique initiatives that you've taken, but also from a practical level, return to work support can include something as simple as workplace adjustments, something really as straightforward as a change in the job routine, a different type of equipment that you've adapted for the individual who's returning to work after an illness or stress or whatever. So again, to take Neil's point, think outside the box a little bit with that one.
Dave, it would be right. I mean, you can link some of the answers in one question to another question, can't you? That's not banned. You're not banned from doing that. So there might be things, for example, on COVID and what you've done on COVID that you want to introduce on staff well-being. But you can link answers to each other. Can I just ask a quick question here, Dave? I'm not putting an application in myself, but I'll ask a quick question of Dave. Can you use the supporting evidence in answer to more than one question? Is that acceptable?
The same piece of evidence, you mean?
For example, a risk assessment.
Yeah. So can you hear me now? Yeah. Yeah. So the question is, can you use the same piece of supporting evidence in more than one answer? Yes, you can, as long as we've said at the very start, as long as it's relevant to each question that you're using it in. And I know that sounds obvious, but I mean, ideally, it would be good to get a different type of, a different piece of evidence. But yes, the short answer is yes, you can. You can use the same evidence as long as it's entirely relevant to your answer. And I know that sounds obvious, but if you're going to use the same piece, the same risk assessment as an example, then let's make sure that it's relevant to the COVID question, number 5, as it is to the one you're using in number 8, the staff wellbeing. But yeah, you can do. Yeah, why not? Question 9, we've sort of covered management of change. Neil spoke about that and gave some examples from previous applicants. Question 10 is about legislative compliance, and what that means really is we're looking for you to describe how you identify which legislation is relevant to your site activities, how you monitor that, and how you evaluate whether you're complying or not. I think an important part of that question is, how do you keep up to date with the changes in legislation in your relevant country, region, sector, whatever. I think that's important. So again, a complete holistic answer is going to get you top marks. So this is how we identify the relevant legislation or requirements for on our organisation or on our site. This is who does it. This is how they do it. This is how we monitor whether we are compliant. So that could be an internal audit once every 6 months, or it could be a specific type of inspection on a piece of equipment to see if you're legally compliant. It could be statutory examinations, that type of thing. So how do you make sure you're compliant? And then finally, just to round the answer off, how do you keep up to date with updates in legal requirements? So, you know, again, to labour the point probably, but make no excuses for it, a start to finish answer rather than, you know, a couple of sentences here and there. Let's get it paint the full picture. Question 11 and question 12 are pretty much sort of linked, I think. So staff participation, that can be formal mechanisms like health and safety committees and things like that, or more importantly, I think anyway, informally, you know, through staff surveys and that type of thing. So I think that's a quite straightforward question. But important question, because that's a big part of ISO 45001, as most people will recognise who've got that. You're audited on how your non-managerial staff participate. And then some examples in question 12 of continual improvement. And again, that can be anything that you've improved the health and safety management system with. And to take Neil's point, link it back to other answers you've provided by all means. But, you know, there must be a multitude of examples you can put in there. There must be. So yeah, I think that's it, Neil, in terms of the question set and the themes and the tips, what to do, what not to do. Ruth?
Thank you very much, Dave and Neil. That's been really, really informative and really helpful. And I think just based on the number of questions that have come in, I think all of our participants feel the same. First of all, just to let you all know that Angel and I will be sharing the recording of the webinar and also the slides after the webinar. So you'll be able to refer back to this recording afterwards and also share it with any of your colleagues who were unable to make it today. I know some of you, Rakesh in particular, had some issues with sound, so hopefully you'll be able to access the information via the recording a bit later. We have got a lot of questions, so we're not going to be able to cover them all today, but Angel and I will follow up over email with the people that have asked questions that we don't have time to cover today. So we're already at time, so I think just to invite everyone who can stay an extra 5 minutes, because I think it would be useful to be able to cover some of the key questions that have come up. And as I said, for those ones that we can't cover today and just don't have the time to do so, we will follow up with you personally as well over email. Okay, so I'm going to try and group some of these questions together, Dave. The first question is in relation to the word count per question. Will it count against the submission if I don't use the full quota allowed? So Neil, do you want to cover that one?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We did cover that briefly, but just to repeat, you should use the 750 words to put your organisation in the best possible position to pick up maximum marks. Where you fall down is if you provide a short, cursory, inadequate answer that doesn't answer the question or doesn't provide sufficient examples. So no, you won't be marked down if you don't use the 750 words, but make sure that you use it to give, you know, the best possible chance to your organisation, and you use a range of examples to actually demonstrate what you're doing. So not essential, but a good guide is that both successful, highly scored organisations do generally use their 750 allocation.
Thanks very much, Neil. So the next question is related to supporting evidence, and it's actually asking whether or not this is included in the question word allowance. So I'll cover that quite quickly, and just to add that it's not. So any additional Part B answers that you want to submit will not take away from your 750 word allowance for the Part A of the question. The next question is a site location still eligible to apply for the award if they have been issued with a regulatory body notice or have suffered a reportable accident during 2021? So, Dave, I'd like to invite you to answer this question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So in the UK, for UK-based applicants, we've obviously, the health and safety executive have various powers, and they range from a prohibition notice to an improvement notice to an advisory note to an informal sort of letter notification, if you like. So the only thing in those that I've mentioned for UK applicants that would prevent eligibility would be a prohibition notice. The prohibition notice is where obviously something so dangerous or presents serious and imminent danger that work or operations, an operation would be stopped. So that would provide a barrier to eligibility. An improvement notice is something that, as you'll all be aware, is something that gives you a period of time to improve, and as the name would suggest, and correct existing control measures. So that wouldn't necessarily prevent eligibility for entering the awards. It's a bit different for international applicants, because obviously different regions and different regulatory bodies within those regions have different sorts of powers, if you like, or different methods of improvements and prohibition are the two things we've just mentioned. So we would look at that on a case-by-case basis, but generally it would have to be something that's pretty serious and either ongoing or you know, has resulted in a prosecution, for example, or there's an ongoing prosecution. That would prevent eligibility. But for international applicants, we would look at it on a case-by-case basis. The advice I would give would be to ask the question, you know, at the start of the application, give the information through, and we can provide you with that, you know, with the clarity straight away, or virtually straight away anyway.
Perfect, thank you, Dave. And I think we will be providing some information at the end of the webinar and in the follow-up in terms of what that email and contact number will be for international and UK clients. There's another question here. It's basically for sites that are applying with multiple applications. So is it acceptable for a one-site application from the same company to include the same response details? So that's basically like if you're applying with, say, 10 applications, can you use the same responses on some of the questions? So Neil, would you be happy to answer that question, please?
Okay, look, if let's say, as Ruth said, the example that we're talking about is an international organization, 10 specific sites, 10 specific applications for the award. What we need to see is what that particular site is doing, what the operation is, who's employed there, what the activity is, what the particular hazards are. And that will vary from site to site. You know, they might all be producing concrete or chemicals. However, there's inherent differences between those sites which need to be brought out in the answers to question 1 and 2. Of course, and Dave will come back on this and elaborate, but they will, you know, they may well have a common management system. They may well have a common senior management structure. However, there will be differences, and it's not good enough to use one template for all 10 applications and saying they're all doing the same thing and they're all managing hazards exactly the same. What you've got to do, and remember, importantly, must say this, it could well be that it's going to be the same adjudicator adjudicating all of those 10 applications. They will see straight away that the word and the words and the sentences and the answers are exactly the same. And it raises alarm bells, because it actually says, well, we haven't been thinking about this site specifically, we've been thinking about the organisation. So put yourself in the best possible position of actually drawing out the differences. Yes, if you've got a common management system, you say so. If you've got a common senior management structure, say so. However, there will be different hazards in all probability, and there will be differences in terms of how the staff at that particular site actually manage those risks associated with those hazards. So, you know, don't think that one answer fits 10 different organizations. You've got to think very carefully, because it does look rather strange if the same form of words has been used for 12 different answers for 10 different applications. It doesn't make sense. You might say, well, there's commonalities. There may be well commonalities, but there will be very, very real differences in relation to how the management of risks at that site actually operate. I don't know if I've done a decent answer on that, but Dave will come in.
Yeah, no, that's spot on, Neil. I think as an adjudicator, and you're right, absolutely right, for standardization reasons and fairness, we try as much as possible to keep the adjudicators with, if there are organizations with multiple applications, we try to keep up the same adjudicator, or at least the same two, with the same organization. So they are going to identify quite quickly that the answers are identical. Now, as Neil has said, again, just to clarify, if you're writing about the management process and it's a corporate or group or organizational based process, that's absolutely fine. No problem with that, to put that in every single application, the answer to the same question, the same wording, sorry, in the answers. That's absolutely fine. What isn't acceptable is then to illustrate that with the same example across all the different sites, because quite frankly there must be variations. There has to be. As Neil said, site A might have implemented the example you're using much more effectively than site B. Site B might well have had very good reasons for that, so tell us about them. Site C might have come up with a variation on the example you're using, and so tell us about it. Just make it clear that the examples you're using on the sites are site specific and are not identical to across all the site applications.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dave. I think you've actually covered a few questions there with both of your combined answers, so that's been really helpful. We're not going to be able to cover all the other questions, but there is one question that I will just touch on now, if that's all right, before we wrap up. And it's a question from Michelle, and she's asked, does she need to choose which award to apply for? As she can see from the website that there's lots of different categories. So just to clarify, the International Safety Award application is what we've been discussing today, but as part of the wider award scheme, we also offer a range of free to enter and auto entry awards as part of our International Safety Award scheme. So this is to allow you, kind of honour individuals or teams within your organisation that you feel have gone above and beyond. And there's many, many different categories. So actually, I think the best thing to do is really focus on your ISA application for now, because that's obviously the most important application in the scheme. But there are these other applications, these other awards that we will offer as well. And maybe take the time to have a read through those descriptions on the website. And if you have any specific questions about any of the awards, don't hesitate to get in touch with Angel and I. I'm quite conscious we've gone quite over with time, and I think we could probably stay here for at least another 2 or 3 hours just talking about the ISA. But I appreciate everyone is quite busy, so I think we probably do need to wrap up. But as I mentioned earlier, for any of the questions that we haven't covered today, we will be following up with an email. We'll also be emailing you all of the slides and also the recording of the webinar today, so feel free to share that with your colleagues. Also, if you have any questions that you think of maybe a little bit later, don't hesitate to get in touch. We're here to support you through this process. Finally, I'd just like to give a big thank you, first of all, to all of our participants that have joined us today. We're very much looking forward to receiving your excellent submissions in the coming weeks. And also a big thank you to Neil and Dave and Angel for sharing their expertise and top tips for this year's scheme. I think that information has been absolutely invaluable. And I hope you've all found it as useful as I have. As I said, don't hesitate to get in touch if you've any questions, and thanks again for joining us today. Thanks all.